Joining us live from Boston, I'm joined now by our regular Wednesday panel, Josh Frydenberg, Liberal MP in Melbourne, Labor MP Ed Husic in the Sky News Centre. Josh, you've had a bit of experience in this when working as a government advisor, the counter-terrorism focus, well, for a decade or more, has worked very effectively in the intelligence community, working very effectively in the United States, but this one did slip their radar, didn't it?
It did, Kieran, and while it's too early to tell who are the exact perpetrators here, it could be a far-right group, it could be more organised terrorism from abroad, we just don't know. It is going to force a reassessment of the security arrangements around major public events, including sporting events. And it also, in Australia, is going to require us to redouble our efforts, I think, in this environment, because just a few months ago the government released a national security strategy which explicitly said the decade of 9/11 was over and that the greatest threats would come from state actors opposed to non-state actors. Personally, I feel that the threat from non-state actors is still very great, and you can see the level of disruption and the level of harm that they can create. So we just need to ensure that all our agencies, whether in Australia it's the ASIO and the Australian Federal Police and other law enforcement agencies, are just working together to minimise the threat to civilians.
It's obviously very early days, Josh, and hard to ascertain from so far away just what went on or who is responsible. But I know some analysts are looking at the fact that the bomb, the crude nature of it, the fact that there's been no one claim responsibility, that this would indicate a lone wolf. What do you make of that discussion, and is it too early to make any definitive statement either way?
Well, in terms of it being organised terrorist attempt from abroad involving Al-Qaeda, normally the intelligence agencies do hear a bit of chatter on the international networks, whether it's radio or elsewhere, or on the phones and the like, and that indicates that something big may happen. Apparently there was no such chatter this time round, which is unusual, and we do know that there have been some extreme groups and some lone wolves, as you say, in the United States that have caused huge damage. I mean, we do remember the Oklahoma bombings, which killed, I think, over 100 people. So it's just too early to tell. I wouldn't want to jump to conclusions either way, and I think President Obama has issued a word of warning in that respect, that we just have to get the evidence together, Kieran, before we come to any final conclusions.
Ed Husic, you heard what Josh had to say when it comes to the need for a change of mindset, not just internationally, but at home when it comes to major sporting events and such. What do you make of this debate in the wake of the Boston bombings?
Well, I think picking up on Josh's point about the fact that no chatter was picked up, I mean, we've always got to be vigilant for changes in tactics and approach, and this possibly suggests that that is something that agencies always have to figure into their planning, and certainly would be the case here. So, and also just seeing that footage as well, Kieran, yesterday. I mean, I've had the opportunity of travelling through Boston a number of times and have friends there. Actually, someone who was located in the JFK library, and like many other Australians who've got friends and family in the US, thought instantly what's going on and are they okay? And then to see the footage itself was just something else. And Bostonians are very sturdy people, I think. You saw evidence of that yesterday when the explosions hit. They didn't scurry; they went straight to where people were injured and worked to help out. And seeing yesterday too, Kieran, if I can just make this point as well, that people can do this to other people is just beyond belief. I mean, we saw Boston, we saw Iraq yesterday as well, ahead of elections, where people had been killed by terror attacks in the streets there, in coordinated series of attacks. I mean, that people can do this to each other is just extraordinary and shameful.
And that young 8-year-old boy that had hugged his father after completing the marathon, who has lost his life, is just devastating.
No, totally.
But on the implications for Australian sports and our events here, Ed Husic, will we have to relook at the way we treat things like City to Surf and marathons and so on? Or is that letting the terrorists win?
I'd sort of echo the words of Premier O'Farrell here in New South Wales that we can't allow that to happen. We have major events that bring the community together, and we need to ensure that those events continue to play that very important role. But at the same time too, it just does remind of us of the need of constant vigilance and being able to obviously change according to tactics or preempt what tactics might be changing, and to be able to ensure that that safety in our way of life continues the way it is without us losing a sense of who we are.
Well, that was the point, Josh Frydenberg, that Barry O'Farrell made yesterday, that you don't want to change the character of things like the City to Surf or the Boston Marathon, that in some ways that lets the terrorists win. But then you've also got the issue that you spoke of before, that the reality of the modern world is that these things can happen, and that you need to be vigilant. So it is a balancing act, isn't it, between the freedom on the one hand, but also having that security awareness on the other.
Absolutely, and we shouldn't kid ourselves. We are a target here in Australia. I mean, you know, you only have to look at what's been said by the head of ASIO publicly in terms of the attacks on that were planned on the Holsworthy barracks in Australia, on Lucas Heights, and other targets in Australia. And after our involvement in East Timor, bin Laden did a video, saying that Australia was a legitimate enemy. So, let's not kid ourselves. We are a target, but at the same time, I think Ed's right and Barry O'Farrell's right. We can't let the terrorists win. We've got to go about our normal day-to-day lives, and we shouldn't hold back from holding any public event, let alone a community sporting event. But we just need to be cautious, and we just need good coordination. That's what prudence requires.
All right, gents, let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk a bit about the domestic political debate in just a moment. Stay with us on AIM Agenda.